Hello guys, in this video I would like to teach you everything about skills and skill builds and how to create your own skill build in Lost Ark. I want to guide you through the basics of a skill build, what is a good skill build, and most importantly, how to think about making yourself a skill build in the game. There is two sides to the game. There is PvP and there's PvE. They are vastly different in terms of what skills you should use. You should not go in a PvP match with your raiding build, and you should not go inside raids with your PvP build. In this video, I want to focus on the PvE side of things, and then in the future on my channel means in 4 days from now. So in 2 or 4 days from now, I'm going to talk about PvP specifically because I want to explain PvP to you. I want to explain how to create a good skill build and what is important in PvP in Lost Ark and how it all works, because many of you tell me that you're always on the ground stunned. So I want to help you avoid that. For now, let's talk about PvE. In terms of PvE, there's dungeons and there's raiding. Now, it's not mandatory that you have a dungeon build and you have a raiding build, but it is useful. In dungeons, the differences in between these two places is, first of all, dungeons are a lot easier. Second of all, dungeons don't require you to move that much. Third, in dungeons, there's a lot more mobs and a lot more trash that you need to kill. So these three things kinda need to be kept in mind when you create a specific build for one or the other. However, it's not a must. You can run dungeons with your raiding build. But the most important thing in PvE is that you have a build made for raiding. You can run that everywhere else, but have one for raiding, and then if you want, you can have one for dungeons or open world or PvE or whatever you're doing, the Tower of Challenge or whatnot, the Cube, actually another nice place that you know, some things can be changed and adapted to fit the cube. Regardless, raiding build, that's the most important. I'm gonna talk about raiding in this video and how you should think about your skills in that sense. I'm gonna start off by quickly telling you the basics of how you create a skill build and how you juggle in between these things. So every skill here has a maximum of 10 points that you can put in it, and then if you have these 10 points, you get the opportunity to select one of these perks per each level. The perks that you select right here are the bread and butter of your build for that specific content. So these things need to be understood by you. I can definitely very easily give you a cookie cutter build for what classes I've played, like Blaster, Summoner for example, but I don't want to do that necessarily because it's important in Lost Ark to understand what you're doing and what this skill is doing. Should you use this skill during a CC phase? Should you use this skill rather on a totem, or are you gonna miss because it's a very thin rocket? It's important for you to understand what exactly do these skills do. There are perks that completely change the way the skills work in that sense, and they completely change even what the skills do in that sense for some of the skills. So it's very interesting, or how they look, or how they penetrate, or how much CC they do, and so on and so forth. It is a very interesting thing to browse through these, especially now in Russia when you're just testing out the game. You have a specific amount of points that you can assign to skills. Now, there is points that you get up until you get to level 50. Naturally by leveling up, and there is points that you get from skill point potions, which I don't have one in my bag to show you, but it's a very juicy looking potion that when you consume, you get 3 skill points extra. Of course, there is a cap on how many skill points you can get in total, and I am going to have a video telling you or showing you every single place that you can get a skill point potion from, because it is important. It's not the end of the world if you don't have every single skill point in the game. You're good, but just saying, it's important because obviously you get to unlock more points in your skills, which make your skills better in that sense. So it's important, right? Now, at any given time in Lost Ark, you have 8 skills on the left side under your HP, and you have your ultimate skill and you have your innate skill. These 8 skills you can set up for yourself. Any skill from your list, and this is all of the list in the current Russian patch. With time and with more patches, we are going to get, or you are going to get also, a second elite skill here that you can either choose one or the other. In terms of the 8 skills, you have to Start reading your skills. This is my advice number one. In raiding, there are 3 things that are important. 1, you need to be able to move. 2, in raiding you need to be able to do damage, because everyone in this game is kind of a DPS, maybe with the exception of the Bard, which also supports and makes you a better DPS. So they are kind of excused in a way from doing hard deeps, but the rest of the 3, including if you're a warlord, you need to pull out some deeps. So you need to have skills that do damage, not skills that just blink you around the boss and around the map. And number 3 in raiding, which is as important as the other 2, is that you need to have interrupts. This game, Lost Ark, is about interrupts in raiding. There are phases during the boss fight in which everyone needs to contribute with some sort of interrupt. The simplest way is just to hover over your skills, and where you see there impairment 1, that means this skill is able at level 1 of impairment to do some form of interrupt for the boss. Sorry to put it in so bland terms, but I just want those of you who are new to the game, because that's my main focus, to understand what I'm talking about. So this skill, it has impairment at level 1. This particular skill doesn't have any form of impairment. So obviously I will never use this skill in raid. Not because simply it just doesn't have impairment, but on top of that it also is just a very mediocre skill for PvE in general. This skill again doesn't have any impairment. This skill has impairment too. This skill also has parts destruction at the first level. As I was telling you, there is many types of CC that you can do on the bosses, and depending on which boss you are fighting, some bosses have a part of them, of their body, that can be destroyed. Obviously this particular skill, the parts destruction skill that has this stat on it, does good to that, because when it's time to destroy that part, that annoying part, for example, there's a scorpion boss in one of the raids. Now the scorpion's tail, which does a lot of electrical, very annoying damage to you, can be destroyed, and then after you destroy it, the boss is not going to have a tail anymore, and it's not going to do any of those mechanics that are related to his tail, right? Again, another skill that is actually really good in this sense. It has parts destruction, it has impairment, and you can also use it from the back, in the sense that when you're at the back of the boss, you do extra damage with this skill if you cast it, right? And it goes like this for every single class, no matter what class you play, it goes like this for every single one of them. It is important to keep these things in mind in terms of CC when you make your skill build. You don't have to always have only these skills, but you do need to have them to contribute when it's time to do it, to contribute to your group's success in that sense. Other than that, let's talk about the other 2 things, because we talked a lot about number 3 that is important in raiding, which is the CC part. Let's talk about the other 3. Moving. Now, skills that every class has, those skills that just keep you pinned down for quite a long time, and the only way to get out of them is by using your dash. Now, using your dash is a very important resource in Lost Ark, not only in PvP but also in PvE, especially in raiding. The dash in Lost Ark does not make you a god. It's just, unless of course you have a seal for it, it's just a thing that is used for you to either cancel the animation of some skills, which is the worst time to use your dash, because that means you've wasted it, because you've casted that skill that you shouldn't have casted at that time, and you need to remove it, the animation of it, or to stop it by dash. The best way to use your dash is to reposition yourself from a telegraph around you, reposition yourself fast, and start continue your DPS on the boss. Yeah, so movement in raiding is a mandatory thing. It's a life-saving thing. You always are on the move in the raid. Sometimes there is bosses that do so many things and turn so often that you always kinda are moving, and you barely have time to cast this and then continue moving again. So it depends on the boss. That's why I'm saying that builds sometimes need to be adjusted depending on the raid boss that you do. And in terms of the DPSing part in a raid, you always have to remember that it's not a bad thing to have one of those big boy deep skills that keep you in place while you cast it. Bosses get stunned in raids, so you do have time to do that. If you play well and you know you can anticipate mechanics, you also have time to cast one of those long casts. The most important thing that I want you guys to remember in creating your skill build and choosing the skills that do the most damage, or skills that you feel the most comfortable and do the most damage from your pool, is: are you efficient using them? Can you use all of the skills that you have on your bar for that particular boss? Or are there skills on your bar that you just literally don't have time to press, and you're just basically wasting a spot here, or even worse, wasting a spot that is also maybe glyphed to the last stage here? And that's kind of everything that I wanted to talk about in this basic tutorial on how to use your skills for PvE in particular, and how to think about your build. I want you guys to be smart and the ones who come up with things for your own class, depending how you play. Again, I could give you builds for a variety of classes and you could use them yourself, but is that something that you want to play with? Do you know as many mechanics as I do for bosses and for my own class that you can put these skills to good use? Are you gonna hit your targets with those skills, or is your target just gonna move off your skills before you get the chance to cast them always, because you don't know when the target is standing still or whatnot? So as you progress, my point is, as you progress, as you learn Lost Ark, you can adapt and adjust the skills that you use. Sometimes it's nicer to start with less powerful skills that are just useful, or that allow you to move while you're doing your combat with the raid boss, than to start out with a build that some very experienced summoner after 5,000 hours put into the summoner can play with, because he can anticipate the whole fight, or his gear is so good that he really doesn't care about getting hit by that, but you do. So it depends on your practice. You adjust with time, and I hope this video just gave you a good idea on how you need to think about things and what's important in PvE and raiding specifically. As I said before, I'm gonna have another video soon talking about PvP. I really want to explain that to you guys, and I'm also gonna have, if any of you are interested, I can talk about in depth about my blaster and what builds I use for PvP, PvE, and why. I can explain to you every single skill in the book if that's something that some of you want to see. Other than that, I wish you guys lots of love as always. Thank you so much for your time as always, and I'm gonna see you really soon in just a few days.